Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be focusing on Honeybee Stamps Adventure Awaits pattern paper, and I'll also be using a little bit of their Pinstripes and Polkadots Outdoors collection. They have so many fun new products as part of the new Adventure Awaits release, but I really wanted to do a video featuring the beautiful pattern paper in their Adventure Awaits paper pad. So let's jump right into card design number 1, and this card is super simple. I selected one of the many beautiful scenery backgrounds, layered it on some dark brown cardstock. The sentiment is from their Be Still collection. I have the stamps and coordinating honey cut dies. I've already stamped and cut this out, and using the outline die, I cut out a second piece from brown cardstock. And you may have noticed earlier I cut it out from the background. I'll glue those two pieces together, creating a drop shadow of the brown cardstock. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere it on the right side of the mountains. And that's it, this card is finished. Super simple. You could dress it up and add bling, but with gorgeous pattern paper like this, I decided to keep the card nice and simple. Now moving on to card design number 2. I selected this beautiful forest pattern paper for the background. I'm also using some pattern paper from their Grain and Grunge collection. I know I say it all the time, but it's one of my favorites from Honeybee Stamps. It works with all of their collections. Using their Deckle Edge A2 dies, I cut out a frame, and I'll be using that frame and also the inside piece. I'm adding some thin foam strip dimension on the back side of the frame. I'm using the black color. I'll remove the release paper and adhere the decal frame onto the wood grain background. And I know I am covering up most of that beautiful wood grain, but you will see just a peek of that wood grain along the outside of the decal frame. The wood grain pattern paper adds just a little more detail than using brown cardstock. Then I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4 1/4 inches by 5.5 inches. I'll put ATG tape on the back of that center piece and also a little bit of glue along that outside edge. Just want to make sure it lays nice and flat. Then I'll adhere it inside the decal frame. Even though I'm using the same piece of pattern paper for the background, by cutting out the decal frame and popping it up slightly, it'll add just that little extra detail. Next, I'll add a couple of tree die cuts, and these are from the new Summer Cabins die set. I used some of the pattern paper from the Adventure Awaits collection. There's the background piece of the tree and also 2 smaller pieces that add the etch detail. Just glue those all together. I'll add the first tree on the left side, tucking the trunk underneath the edge of the decal frame. And for the other 2, I did pop them up using some foam dimension. For the last 2 trees, I am trimming off the trunk just to make them slightly shorter than the first tree. And I'll tuck the bottom of the tree underneath the decal frame. For a sentiment, I'll be stamping directly onto the card, so I am using my Mini Misty. I already have my stamp all set up. I'm using Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink. The sentiment is part of the Be Still stamp set. This is Be Still and Know That I Am God, Psalm 46:10. I will ink it up a few times to get a nice solid impression. This is another card I decided not to add any bling. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 3, I selected this lovely pattern paper that has leaves in all 4 corners, a white sort of snowfall look in the background, and a beautiful wreath, although I will be covering up that wreath. I selected one of the wood grain pattern papers and cut it out using the new Sweet Stacks oval set. Then I used some of the smaller oval dies to create 2 oval frames. I'll put glue on the back of the largest oval frame and adhere it onto the pattern paper. My Honeybee Stamps glue is starting to run a little low, so it took a minute for the glue to come out. There's one area I got quite a bit of glue, so I'm using my finger to spread it out. I have a wet baby wipe off on the side, so I'm wiping my fingers on there. Otherwise, I'll end up with glue all over my card. Once I have the first oval adhered, I'll do the same thing with the second oval frame. I'm putting some precision tip glue on the back side, and I am using a pair of reverse tweezers to hold that frame while I add the glue on the back. Then I'll adhere the smaller oval frame in place, trying to get those lined up together again. For the final oval, I do have foam dimension on the back. I'll remove the release paper and add that to the center of the card. And by creating the oval frames and popping up the smaller oval, it adds some extra interest to the card. Once I have that oval adhered, I'll flip over this panel, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. You can see on the back side of the pattern paper another beautiful forest scene. This is a paper pad that you'll need more than one since it is so hard to select which side of the paper to use. Honeybee Stamps never disappoints with their beautiful paper pads. For an image, I'm using the Lovely Layers tree set. There are 3 different trees on this set. I'm using the largest tree. I cut out the background from some dark green cardstock. The very front is just a slightly lighter green shade. And for the trunk, I use some brown cardstock. I'll adhere the trunk on top of the background piece, then add the final layer with all the lovely edge detail. I love how you can see the trunk through all the branches. I'll be adding a little bit of splatter using some gold watercolor paint. I'm using the lightest color, which is more silver than gold. I'll gently tap my paintbrush over the tree to add this beautiful shimmery splatter. And don't worry, I did set that aside to dry. I'll put glue on the back and adhere my tree onto the card. For a sentiment, this is from the Mini Messages Everyday set, and I also use the coordinating Mini Message Banner die set. I'm mixing 2 of the sentiments. I just wanted to say hi there. On the very right and left side of each of the banners, I did put a small piece of foam dimension. That way it stays at the same level and doesn't droop down on the sides. I'll put glue in the center and adhere the 2 sentiments underneath the tree. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. The new Lovely Layers tree set is perfect to use for cards year-round. You could easily switch out the sentiment that I used and add Merry Christmas. Now moving on to card design number 4. I will be using a card sketch for inspiration. This is from MFT. It's number 650. I selected 2 pattern papers. The brown, blue, and grayish pattern is from Adventure Awaits, and the other is from the Pinstripes and Polkadots collection. I'll be using the Tone on Tone polka dot pattern. It's pretty light blue color. And I'll be distressing it using some brown ink from Catherine Pooler. This is the S'mores ink color. I'm adding just a light coat along the edges and a little bit of ink in the center. I'll layer both of the pieces on some dark brown cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base. From the same dark brown cardstock, I cut a narrow strip. It's about 1/4 of an inch wide. I put some tear tape on the back side, and I'll adhere it between those 2 pattern papers, just adding a little bit of contrast and separation. Next, I'll add this fun shield die cut shape, and this is from the Shield Layering Frames die set. I cut it out from some white shimmer cardstock. I'll put glue on the back and adhere it on the right side of the card, following the design of the card sketch. Using the trees from the Summer Cabin set, I'll add 2 of them inside the frame. I cut out the background from some dark brown cardstock, and the branches I use a light green cardstock. I'll adhere the branch pieces onto the background, and I already have the second tree all assembled. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere both of the trees inside the shield frame die cut piece. The trees will overlap just slightly. The tree on the left will be up higher than the tree on the right. The sentiment is from the mini message set, and I cut it out using the mini message banner. This is just me saying hello. I will pop up the sentiment using some of Honeybee Stamp's thin white foam strips. I'll remove the release paper and adhere the sentiment in the upper left-hand corner. To finish off the card, I will be adding some embellishments. I'm using the new Pacific Northwest Pearl stickers. Selected the light blue color. I'll put 3 in the upper left-hand corner around the sentiment and 2 in the lower right-hand corner. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Card design number 5 is another very simple card design. Honeybee Stamps did all the work by creating this beautiful shield with flowers and foliage all around it. On one sheet of pattern paper, there are 2 of these beautiful designs. I trimmed it down enough so I still could have a little border of another pattern paper behind it. After adhering the 2 pieces together, I put my card front onto a card base. For a sentiment, I did some heat embossing with white embossing powder on dark green cardstock. The sentiment is relax and enjoy your special day, and I did pop it up using some foam dimension. And the sentiment is part of the Be Still stamp and coordinating honeycut dies. I'll adhere both parts of the sentiment on the right side of the card. For embellishments, I'm using more of the Pacific Northwest pearls, this lovely light peach color. I'll put 2 in the upper left-hand corner and 3 around the sentiment. For a final finishing touch, I thought this card needed a little bit of sparkle. I'm using a clear glitter brush and adding it to the flowers, the feather, and some of the foliage. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For card design number 6, I will be using a card sketch for inspiration. This is from Cards TV. It's sketch number 24. I selected this lovely wood grain pattern paper for the background, and the opposite side has feathers, foliage, and leaves. I think the 2 designs work beautifully together. I'll layer both of these pieces on some black cardstock, put ATG tape on the back, and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. For the 2 narrow strips that go across the card, I used some green pattern paper and also some of the tone-on-tone polka dot paper for the sentiment. And I've already stamped the sentiment, sending you a happy hello. This sentiment is part of the Mini Messages Everyday Stamp Set. Before adhering the green strip, I am putting a scrap piece of cardstock and pattern paper on the very left side. And that will help keep everything nice and level so the left side doesn't dip down. Then I'll attach the sentiment strip on top. Next, I'll add an oval die cut, and I cut this out from some white shimmer cardstock. I'll be putting it right above the sentiment. So first, I'll cut just the very bottom portion of the oval off. Then I can tuck that edge underneath the sentiment strip. For the image on the card, I'll be using the lovely Layers Nest. I've already gone ahead and cut out all of the pieces. Using Catherine Pooler's S'mores ink color, I'm adding just a little bit of ink to all of the nest pieces and also the feathers. This is a very dark brown ink color, so I'm adding a very light coat of ink. There are 3 main pieces to build the nest, plus a couple of branches. Once I've added ink to all of the nest pieces, I'll pull out the feathers and put just a tiny bit of ink on the tip of each of the feathers. The feathers are so small, but they still have that beautiful etch detail. Once I've inked all of the pieces, I can start assembling the nest. This is a great die set with lots of detail. You can feature just the nest, or you could add some of the birds. Honeybee Stamps has several different lovely layer bird die sets. My card will feature just the nest, but I will fill it up with 3 eggs and add some of the beautiful feathers around the nest and one next to the sentiment. Starting with the background piece, I'll add the second layer, then I'll tuck all 3 eggs inside the nest. Now I'll add one of the branch pieces on the top of the nest and one of the feathers. Then I'll add the final layer of the nest and one more branch piece in the very front. And I am making a huge mess with the glue, getting it all over my craft mat, so I am trying to wipe away some of that glue. I'll tuck 2 more of the feathers underneath that front branch piece. The glue hasn't dried completely, so I was able to peel it up so I could tuck that feather underneath. I'll put 1 feather on the left side and 1 feather on the right side of the nest. I cut out 4 of the feathers, but I'll only be adding 3 of them to the nest. I was trying to add the 4th feather, but it didn't look right. After I clean up my craft mat again, I'll put glue on the back of the nest and adhere it onto the white oval. And at first I accidentally grabbed the finish card, so you may have seen a quick peek. For embellishments, I'll add some of the essential enamel stickers in black. I'll put 3 of the medium size in the upper right hand corner and 2 of the smallest size in the lower left hand corner. And I really wanted to use that final feather, so I'll adhere it on the right side of the sentiment underneath the nest. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For the other card, I used a smaller oval, and I felt that the nest really got lost on the pattern paper. So the card I made with you, I used the larger oval, and I think that worked out better. Now here's another look at the 12 cards I made using Honeybee Stamps Adventure Awaits paper pad, along with several of their new products from their Adventure Awaits release. This paper pad is absolutely beautiful. I love all the different scene backgrounds. You can simply add a sentiment and some bling and your card is finished. Or you can step it up and add some extra detail. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.